How's it going, everyone? It's Artifact. We've got another little vital lead today, which is called the crispy onion, because it goes with our hot dog base. Now, I got an avocado for this to represent the crispy onion. So if you like it, then make sure you hit like on the YouTube video. Anyway, we're going to jump straight into this. I've done a little bit of post-processing. Basically, I thought that I could make a lead sound to kind of complement the bass sound that I made. So this was the original bass. And now the lead that I've got in with it. So it's pretty cool. I mean, the pitching and stuff could be a little bit improved, but what I wanted to talk to you about today is how you would make a kind of lead sound like this in Vital in the synth, because I think it's really, really hard to get a cool, interesting lead sound, and it's why I often opt for other kind of sources of sounds for leads, like samples and things like this. But let's say you did want to try and make a cool lead sound, like a crispy onion. Then you can open up Vital. I'm going to just play the, I'm going to turn off the processing. The reason why I've blacked it out is because I've just recorded a Patreon exclusive tutorial on like post-processing, because I kind of need to leave some juicy stuff for the Patreons, because we have like 70 people and they're paying monthly, and I can't just give away like everything on YouTube. But I can definitely show you a lot still, especially with sound design and things like this. So let's jump right into this patch. Let's see what we've got here. This is the little MIDI lead that I created. A couple of cool little tricks that I did to achieve this sound, which you can definitely learn from and apply to like your own synthesis and stuff like that. So I'm just going to go over those really. So this first oscillator is kind of like a sine that's going into a saw, but it's not that great on its own. We've got quite a few effects running on this because it is a lead sound, so I just think that we need to do more effecting and processing to make it sound better. But let's turn it off to start with. So here, what I'm doing with the modulations is I have 3 different LFOs. I have one envelope modulator as well, and those are the 4 different things that we're going to be using to create the movement in the sound. Now, obviously, it sounds quite naff on its own like this, so when we introduce the second oscillator, we already get a lot crispier. And the reason why that is, because if I play the second oscillator on its own, right? It's the combination of them together that's making this sound, because we are using, we're actually using frequency modulation, and we're also going to be using ring modulation. And this is 2 different, ring modulation and frequency modulation. If I just show you, so ring modulation produces a more complex signal from the components simply by multiplying them together. Frequency modulation produces a more complex sound by adding a signal to the frequency of another. So basically, ring modulation is like multiplying it into a new sound, and frequency modulation is like adding one oscillator into the other one. And what this means from an average Joe perspective is they both create different kind of effects, and you should just try both and see what sounds cool. So anyway, we've got this second oscillator. Obviously doesn't sound that particularly impressive. It's like I'm not even sure what wave this is anymore, some kind of sine something. Anyway, I've pitched it up actually to 7, so it's like a 7th, which is like kind of like it's giving it a bit of a chord basically. But how we get this sound is because we're using the FM again, and what that means is also every little difference we apply to the pitch is going to radically change the actual final result. So think of this oscillator 2 as the effector of like the first one. So this second one, by changing this, we're going to change the overall sound of the first oscillator. So you can see I've already taken down the pitch to 0, so they're both the same. It's a completely different sound. And up at 7, when I've got a chord here, it's actually something more representative of like a crunchy lead sound. And also, there's this subtle tuning here where you can really just fine tune the pitch. And what you can do when you're doing your sound design, if you like slightly play with the tuning on this part, I tend to leave my first oscillator like clean, and then on my extra oscillators I will like slightly adjust the tuning. And if you do that like constantly throughout your sound design process, you'll actually be able to make quite big differences just by adjusting a little bit of tuning, because that's how important pitch is. When you're running through things through all these effects, the little pitch changes make a big difference. So again, here we've got I think what's giving this wave its shape is this in harmonic. So if I just turn that off, you can already see it's kind of like a sort of saw square wave thing, and it's this in harmonic that's changing the complete shape of the wavetable. And that was just through trial and error. I was just testing them out, and that one just sounded quite aggressive and nice. So then we're just going to go on to our third oscillator quickly, which is it's another kind of one from Basic Shapes. So it's like a sine wave, but starting to go in another direction towards like a saw. And this has been pitched down, and this is being ring modulated with this one here. So again, this one in the middle, you know, this is frequency modulating the first one, so it's adding into the first one, but at the same time it's also multiplying itself with this one. Sounds complicated, I know, but it's actually not that complicated. It's basically you're just trial and error, and you're like using RM and FM with each other until you get an interesting result of oscillators combining with each other or multiplying each other. So obviously without this second one, it's a completely different sound. Okay, so that is the power of using RM and FM. There's a little bit of vocoder on here, and all that's really doing is just changing the shape of the wave slightly. Can't hear such a drastic effect. With the unison as well, the first one and the third one I've kept on mono, and it's this sort of central one which is sort of tying everything together with the frequency and ring modulation. This is the one that I've actually chosen to apply a width to, with 3 voices and a very small amount of unison detune. Says it right there. Okay, and what I've done here on this third one, I've also pitched it down a bit because it's an octave lower, because I wanted to get a bit of like that sub into the lead. Even if I'm going to take some of that sub out of the lead, it's still like nice to have a bit in the sound design process sometimes, just to like see if you can add a bit of warmth to the overall lead. And it's kind of like a lead bass anyway, so you could leave it in if you wanted to use it in that way. So what we're going to do next is show you a couple of the little modulations that are going on. One of the main ones is this is a LFO2. It's doing like a quarter notes, and I've set it to triplets just because I'm playing around with different timings, just for fun. And then this is going modulating the unison D tune. So what that's doing is it's making the sound like a bit wider and then narrower, like along with the LFO. You can see here how it's moving in and out, and this creates this like natural movement in the width of the sound. So that's pretty cool. And then we're going just down to these two filters here, and I'm using these phaser filters because I mentioned this before. They like just add a different character to the sound, and you don't necessarily take out too many frequencies. And then what I'm also doing is I'm testing them out on the different oscillators. It's really cool. You can just click here. You can click on and off on different ones and hear how it sounds. And obviously on this one, it sounded like a lot grittier, more aggressive. So, you know, you can test out which routing through different filters works per each oscillator, and that's going to also give you another level of control in terms of like how you're distorting and twisting certain parts of the source oscillators. Again, these filters are just being modulated very simply by LFOs at different speeds that kind of just fitted with the kind of groove I was going with at the time. There's one more cool thing, which is this envelope, right? And I've actually mapped it to the level of this oscillator 2 here. Now this is important, so pay attention, all right? When we're using FM and RM as well, I believe, but when we're FMing this one into this one, the level doesn't actually need to be on, so I could leave the level off. So now there's actually no volume coming from this oscillator. But if I turn it off, then we completely lose the effect, and that's because this even though the level is completely down, it's still frequency modulating this one and creating that effect. So we don't actually need the level of it if we just want to use it as like an effector of sound. But what we're going to do in this case, or what I have done, is I've applied an envelope to the level, so it actually just hits at the beginning. Like you hear that like 7th note up of the original sound of the oscillator, like. You hear that hit on top of everything else, and I've just done it on an envelope so that we have no sustain, and we just have a short decay, so it's just a short like attacking sound basically. So I think that's quite cool. So that's basically the patch, and it's going alongside the bass line, and then obviously I'm adding all this post-processing stuff. So if you want to check out all those extra parts, definitely check out the Patreon. The link is down below. We have like 70 members or something around there now, and the Discord group that we have, like I learn most of my newest techniques and things from the guys in there. So you will also be able to like be a part of that and chip in and also learn a bunch of stuff from the other people. So anyway, yeah, I hope you learn a little bit more about that. Like I said, it's not my favorite lead sound, but I think there's a few little things I talked about in this video that might give you an extra level of knowledge about what you can do with synthesis to create like different movements and things like that. Yeah, so peace out basically.